Hey there, Mike here again. Another DIY, this one on thermostats for your car. So remember to like and subscribe if you can, and pass this on to your friends, pass on the channel. This will not be a long video. So the question always comes up about thermostats. Can you use a colder one in your car? Will it make your engine colder? Can you take one out totally if you don't live in a really cold climate? The answer is you need a thermostat, and I'll explain why. First, what does a thermostat do? It only does one thing. No matter how cold of one you put in, it is not going to lower how hot your engine runs. Its purpose is to set the bottom, the very minimum that it's going to open up to allow the water to circulate through the cooling system. Having a 160-degree thermostat is not going to keep your cooling system running at 160 degrees. It has nothing to do with the top end. It's going to run at the high end, whatever that high end is, no matter what thermostat. That would be like saying if you don't put a thermostat, it'll run at 0. No, that's not true. Whether you put a 140, a 160, a 180, a 195, a 205, if your engine runs, say, at 210, like my Silverado does, then that's what it's going to run at, no matter what. But there is harm of having a colder or none at all. And in a second, I'll speak of a time when it is okay to put in a colder one, but that's very rare. But what happens is when that thermostat, if it's a 180, when it reaches 180 degrees, it will open up and the water will start circulating. Like I said, if your engine wants to run at 210, it's going to run at 210. And that thermostat's just basically going to be open all the time. But the reason you want a thermostat and you want one close to what you're supposed to be using is because if that water is always circulating through your system, it doesn't have enough time to really cool down in the radiator. It's cooling down some, but this is the way it normally works. You start up your car, your thermostat is closed because the engine's cold. And that allows your engine to heat up to its proper temperature. And you want your engine running at its proper temperature. Sorry about that, had some neighbors coming over. Anyway, you want your engine to run at its proper temperature. And this allows your valves, your seals, your bearings, everything to expand this right amount so it runs the most efficient. When your engine's cold, there's too much slop in there. They're not expanded as much, and you'll have more bearing wear, more seals, your valves, everything will wear more. So the whole purpose of that thermostat is to stay closed, don't let the water circulate, let the engine warm up quicker, get to where it wants to be. Then when the thermostat will open up. Well, when it does that, the water pump rushes the water through. You get a cold influx of water coming in. It may or may not shut down that thermostat again. That's a good thing. It allows the water inside your engine to heat up, keeping that engine at that certain temperature, and at the same time, the water that's in the radiator isn't circulating and it's cooling. Either a regular fan or electric fan or just driving down the road and the wind blowing through it, it's cooling it. And then when it hits that, let's say it's the 187, 190, what a lot of Chevys are, as soon as it hits that 190 and that thermostat opens again, starts circulating more water. And that water hopefully is much cooler. Then the thermostat shuts down again, and it allows the water in the radiator to start to cool down and lets the engine water that's in the engine heat back up. It keeps that engine running at the right temperature. If you don't have it in there, that thermostat's going to be, there's no thermostat, or if it's too low and it stays open all the time, that water's always circulating. And it doesn't have a chance to really cool down properly because it doesn't stay in a radiator long enough to cool down. It will cool a little bit, but not much. Now in the winter months, is that a big deal? Probably not. But in the summer months, you can, with a too cold of a thermostat or no thermostat at all, you can actually overheat your engine because that water doesn't have time to cool down in the radiator. So you need it to stay there for a little bit, and that's what the thermostat does, is it shuts down, lets it sit, lets it cool, thermostat opens because the water in the engine got hot, circulates some more, the colder water gets into the engine, cycles all over again. But without that thermostat, or if it's too low of a temperature, it's going to stay open all the time or be like there isn't one there. And that means your engine's going to eventually run way hot. Now, if you're only driving a mile or two to work and a mile or two back, and you're only running the car for 15 minutes at a time, chances are by the time it got up to about normal temperature, you're shutting it off anyway. But if you're going to do any driving at all, you need a thermostat in there. You need the right thermostat in there, give or take 5 degrees or whatever. So like, I think the one for my Chevy Silverados, I think a 190, but they show 187 to 192 is the OEM recommended temperature. So that's, if I threw a 160 in there, my engine's not going to heat up in all the way to where it wants to be before the thermostat opens. Cold water is going to come in. Eventually it will warm up, but it's going to take longer. And when it's taking longer, that means all that driving I'm doing is going to have more wear and tear on the bearings, on the seals, on the valves, on the pistons. Everything isn't. And then what happens is when it overheats or gets too hot because it's circulating, not having a chance to cool, all those metal parts are expanding too much, and now you have more friction, more heat, more wear and tear. So the bottom line is you do need a thermostat. You want a thermostat that's proper for your engine. Now, I did say, is there a time where you would have a cooler thermostat? Well, obviously, if you modified the engine, you would want a different thermostat in there. You'd have to figure out, calculate how hot it's going to, normal operating temperature is going to be, and get a thermostat for about that temperature. But you may have bored out your engine, put in bigger pistons and cylinder rings and so on, and you've modified it. It's not the stock engine anymore. Another time is if you're racing, it's going to be a little bit different because you're not running antifreeze, you're running water. Usually straight water. They don't allow antifreeze on a lot of racetracks because if there's a leak, it slips and everything. So, you need, again, the antifreeze is only for the winter anyway. If you lived in a 75-degree temperature all year round, you'd only want to put water in there. I wouldn't even put antifreeze. But that's a whole different subject. Another time you might want to change and possibly get a cooler thermostat is if you happen to put in an oversized or a different size radiator. You don't want to put in a smaller one because then it's not going to cool down, it's not going to handle it. But if you put in a much oversized one, well, then that's going to cool down the water a little bit too quick. But by putting in maybe a lower one in there, it may open and close at a different rate. Normally you'd want to put a little bit of a higher temperature, but that's where you have to play with the judgment of that, depending on if you have a modified water pump. Does it pump 1.5 times faster than a stock one? So therefore the water that's going through is pumping much quicker. You may need a cooler one so that it opens and closes sooner and opens up so then it can rush, but then you're going to get a big radiator that's cooling in, boom, you're back down to 140-degree temperature. It shuts down. So you would play with colder or hotter temperature ones if you've modified the engine or if you've modified the cooling system. But for stock, regular cars on the market, you want a thermostat, you don't want to have none, and you want the right thermostat temperature. You don't want a cooler one. You will actually run it hotter. Hope this helps. Again, subscribe, like, pass it on to your friends. And this is all about thermostats. Any car, any truck, it's the same concept. So have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye.